Hello, everyone. Good morning or good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us here for our fifth and final webinar of our Network Assurance Prep series. My name is Rigo Villa, and I'm one of the community managers on the Cisco Learning Network, and I'll be your host today. In this session, we will be covering data collection implementation review. But before we get the session underway, I wanted to share a couple of quick housekeeping notes. First, I want to let our attendees know that all of the mics will be muted. So if you do have any questions during the live session, we ask that you please post them in the question and answer panel, as that would help us manage and keep track of all of the incoming questions and would also allow us to provide you with a much more timely response. Next, if you experience any audio streaming issues during the live presentation, I do recommend using the call-in telephone number that I'm going to be posting in the chat window here in just a moment. We are also going to be having some poll questions throughout this presentation in the form of practice questions for you all. So it will be a little bit of an interactive session. When we activate one of these questions, you are going to see the Slido polling window pop up on your event screen, and then that's when you'll have an opportunity to submit your answer. So we look forward to your participation. Also, at the end of this webinar, you're going to get a pop-up survey with a couple of questions about today's presentation. And we would really appreciate it if you can just take a moment to fill it out and share with us any thoughts or feedback that you may have about today's session. And we will also have a post-event discussion on the CLN that you can visit after the webinar. So that's a great place where you can ask any additional questions or continue the conversation about today's topic. And I'm going to be sharing the link to that discussion a little bit later on in the presentation as well. And last but not least, I wanted to take a moment to present our two subject matter experts. First, we have technical leader in ThousandEyes customer engineering, Abdiel Hernandez. And then we have technical account manager in ThousandEyes customer engineering, Miguel Hernandez. And then as I mentioned a moment ago, I'm Rigo Villa, and I'm happy to be hosting this session for you all today. And without any further delay, I am now going to turn it over to our first speaker to get us started. So Abdiel, if you're ready, please take it away.
Thank you, Rigo. So let's do a review of our agenda today. We are going to start with a recap for those of you who have missed a webinar. Hello to you all in the chat that are greeting us. I have someone in the chat saying that they can't hear us. Is everyone able to hear us, or is it only Victor? I'll just take a pause to confirm.
We have people that they can hear.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're good.
All right, good. So then we're going to carry on with the self-study guide review page by page. Different to the other webinars that we've delivered, we're going to cut short that section because we have demos for you. This domain 2 of the ENNA certification exam is spent in almost everything related to configuration of tests, endpoint deployment at scale, etc. But it's heavy on test configuration, and that's why we want to be able to demo these for you today. And we are going to end with practice questions, 5 to 7 practice questions, similar to what we've done on the previous webinars, some program reminders, and Q&A. So we have had 5 webinars so far. So make the most of this assurance prep program. We have the webinar recordings for you available. If you missed one, you can go back and watch it. We have released the complete PDF file for all 4 domains, and which you can download on that QR code. Now, we have released the guide as a PDF file, but we will we are also releasing the guide in a site as a website. That's a GitHub Pages site. So make sure to go to the link that Rigo will be posting, and you will be able to access the most current version of the study guide there. There's an exam discount coming soon. Stay throughout the webinars. We will walk you through all of the promotions that we have for you, and we're just really excited to have been here, and we hope that you are preparing for the exam and that you feel confident about taking it. So today's webinar is going to be focused on domain 2, which is data collection and implementation, which in plain English means test configuration and a couple of other topics, but mainly ThousandEyes test configuration. Structure of the study guide, we've covered this a few times, but just a quick reminder, we always provide the cognitive level for the specific task. Remember that we have domains, then we have tasks within each domain, and for each sentence, there's a word that defines the complexity level for that task, and how it tells you how you're supposed to be preparing for it. Then we have an overview, key concepts, resources, and question samples. For test configuration, we included some videos that are walkthroughs from our product documentation. So, just to make it easier for you and have a single place to prepare for your exam. Now, for this specific domain, we have 2.1, which starts with configuring enterprise agents on network devices. These might be a little challenging for you in terms of labbing up, because when we talk about network installing agents on network infrastructure, we mean installing them on ASRs, ISRs, Catalyst 9Ks, 8Ks, etc. And if you have access to those, that would be awesome, because then you can test, you can prepare for that section. If not, at the very least, try to remember the configuration. Describe endpoint agent deployment at scale. So know what tools are used for deploying the endpoint agent at scale. And then we have our main focus for this session, which is configuring test tools. We have lots of tests for network, for DNS, for voice, for web. So make sure you understand the overall structure and how they are configured. We have the same task for endpoint agent tests, which are different from the cloud and enterprise agent tests. And then we have the describing purpose and limitations for synthetic web tests, as well as implementing authentication methods. All right, so now let's carry on with the review. I'm going to share my screen here, and we're going to start quickly reviewing the contents of these of the domain 2 from the study guide. So here we have 2.1. I mentioned that this is specific to deploying enterprise agents on Cisco switches and routers hardware. So you have a few options to do that. In a nutshell, you can deploy MX integration, or to enable the enterprise agent on those Meraki MX devices. How to deploy the enterprise agent to routers, to Cisco routers, using vManage, as well as app hosting or guest shell to deploy it to Nexus switches. So here is where what I mentioned, we provided some YouTube links in here. If you go to this site, we've embedded the video, so you don't have to go to YouTube. You can just stay in the single site. But for the PDF, we have provided the link here. So in the guide, you'll see that we explain app hosting. The architecture is very interesting, so make sure you go through the documentation for app hosting. Make sure that you know the steps to install the application, the steps to remove it, what are the steps to reconfigure an agent after you've deployed it. Those are important when you are going into the exam. So for deployment methods, I already mentioned, in general, we have about 5 of 6 options there. But in this section, we're walking you through each Cisco device type and the options available. For example, for Catalyst switches, you can use app hosting to install them, or you can also install them using DNA Center. For Nexus switches, you can use app hosting or the guest shell. For routers, you can use app hosting or vManage, and so on and so forth. Meraki devices, it has its own method of integrating. It's pretty straightforward, and you can watch the demos on these YouTube links. There's a resources section as well as a sample question section that I will skip for now. And then we have 2.2, which is endpoint agent deployment. Again, this is at a described level. So you just have to know what are the tools that you would use to deploy for each operating system. So we support Windows, Mac, and Room OS. And we also can deploy the endpoint agent as part of the Cisco Secure Client bundle, which is already, on its own. Cisco Secure Client has its own methods of deployment. So, for example, you can deploy it from your VPN headends, firewalls, from the AAA server, etc. That's when it comes down to the Cisco Secure Client deployment. Now, going back to operating systems, for Mac deployment, we have Monkey. For Room OS deployment, that's its own integration through WebEx Control Hub. And for Windows deployment, we have either Microsoft Intune or deploying as GPOs, which is not just for ThousandEyes endpoint agents. It's a tool that's regularly used. Now, this is probably where I'm going to spend most time here before we go into the demos. This is our overview of tests. In ThousandEyes, we classify tests first by the agent type. So you have your endpoint agent tests, and then you have cloud and enterprise agent tests. So in 2.3, we focus on cloud and enterprise agent tests, okay? So we have different layers. We can create tests for the routing layer, network, DNS, voice, and web. And then we have our specific test types. We have VGP tests, agent to server, or agent to agent for network tests. So you can imagine the type of metrics that you can collect from these tests. For example, for BGP, path changes or availability are two of the metrics that are available. For network, we have packet loss, latency, jitter. For DNS, there's different metrics for each test type. For DNS, we have DNS server, DNS trace, or DNS sec test types. Then we have voice, where you can test for RDP and SIP servers. And for web, we have HTTP server, page load transaction API, and FTP server. Now, keep in mind that as of now, we don't have, you're not going to be tested on the API test, but that could change, for the next exam version. So another thing to notice here is that we always, in the views, when you're watching the test results, we will always layer up the test results. So you can watch, or you can contrast the metrics for the network layer, that would be packet loss, latency, jitter, to any of these other metrics that we collect. For example, for web, we can contrast, response time, for example, or availability of a website to network packet loss, latency, and jitter. So make sure you configure these tests. We have, in this section, we offer all of the settings that you can find for a test. And again, we provide all links to YouTube demos where you can see how the test is configured and how you can see the results and so on and so forth. So we do that for each test type, for DNS, for network, for voice, for web, and so on and so forth. Now, I will stop here in the interest of time so that we have enough time to show you a demo. I will just mention briefly that in 2.4 we have our endpoint agent tests, which where we have two main types of tests. The first is synthetic tests, and the second is real user tests. So you can think about them as synthetic tests are either scheduled, something that you configure to a target, say an HTTP server, to be running at a certain frequency that you can configure. And then dynamic tests, which will pick up on the traffic that the user is generating. And that's very specific to WebEx calls, Zoom, or MS Teams. And then real user tests requires a browser plugin to pick up on the browser activity of those domains that you want to monitor, and then provide metrics off of that. All right, so 2.6, 2.5, and 2.6 are for synthetic tests. So we have our transaction scripts there, and then web authentication methods. So the authentication settings that you would expect to find for a specific test, and that's about it. So I will stop here. Miguel, right over to you to help us with the demo, please.
Of course. Thank you, Abdul. So, hello everyone. My name is Miguel Hernandez. It's a pleasure to be with you. And today I'm going to present a walkthrough through the platform itself. So basically, in order to implement some of the tests that Abdul was mentioning, we can go to the following menu that we have present in the screen. We can just select Cloud and Enterprise Agents, and afterwards we can go to Test Settings. Once there, as you can see, you can verify all the tests that you already have implemented in your environment, and also you can start configuring new ones. So in this particular scenario, what I'm going to do is to click on Start Monitoring to visualize the tests that we have at our disposal, as Abdiel was mentioning. Once that we are there, actually, we can click in, for instance, start a single test. And in that view, we will see all the tests that we have available, as Abdiel was mentioning. As you can see, we have all grouped together in multiple sections. So starting from routing, afterwards networks, DNS, web, voice. So it's important to mention that in the way that we are progressing to the tab, we are enabling multiple options, and we are also testing multiple layers from the OSI module. What I want to say with this is, for instance, with the routing test, we will be just testing out the connectivity in the layer 3. Afterwards, for network, we will be testing out the components from the layer 3 and layer 4. And for the web, for instance, we will be testing out the information for all the layers up to the top to the HTTPS, that is the layer 7. It's important to mention that, as Abdiel was mentioning, when we are working with tests, from the very beginning, for instance, in the routing test, we are not stacking any kind of other information or test. But in the way that we are progressing, we can verify that we are stacking more data, and we are stacking the previous test. So for instance, in the case of routing, we are not, we are just running the BGP visualization. But once that we are moving to the network layer, we are running the test for the running layer, and also is coming with the visualization of the previous test that is BGP. In the case of the web, we are testing out the visualization for the HTTP. This is also coming with the test for the network layer, and this is also coming with the BGP test to visualize all the layers all together and try to correlate problems across all the OSI model. So let's start from the very beginning. In the routing test, we have available the BGP table. For configuring a test like this, we just need to assign a administrative name that is important for our team and a description. So in that way, once that we configure the description, our colleagues can understand the kind of configuration that we are using. Afterwards, we can verify, or we can configure the prefix in question that we want to monitoring from the BGP perspective. Then we can enable all the alerts that we have previously configured in order to be alerted if something is going wrong for the BGP test. For this, let me go back to the test configuration and let's visit one of the BGP tables and test that I have available in my sandbox. So as you can see right now in my BGP test, I'm testing out the prefix 8.8.00/19, and I'm testing out all the prefixes that may be included under this particular prefix. So trying to match longer match prefixes that are under this particular subnet. Once that I have this, I save the changes, a new test is gonna be created, and then I can visualize the information by clicking on this particular blue link that is just here. A new tab is gonna be open, and there I will be able to visualize all the monitors and information available from BGP. As you can see on the top, we can verify the prefix that I just configured. And in this case, because I configured include longer prefixes, we are verifying the /24 prefix. Now here we have multiple metrics. You can verify the path changes, you can verify the reachability, and you can verify the updates. If something is going wrong or you notice any changes, that will be noticed in this particular visualization. Now, we can walk through the time by selecting multiple rounds. So for instance, as you can see, I'm selecting this particular round that is from July 9 at 7 p.m. to 7:15 p.m. The time zone is depicted just here. If I want to change or visualize information for different place, I can just move through the timeline and pick up the time that I'm looking for. Once that I'm in the time that I'm looking for, I can just scroll down and start visualizing the information at that precisely moment for all the monitors in the BGP. As you can see, we can visualize multiple monitors across the globe. So we can visualize the perspective from the BGP routing table from each monitor and the city where this is located. If there are changes, well, we will see that depicted with different colors. For instance, when there are withdrawal of particular updates, a line is marked in red color. Right now, everything looks pretty well, so there are no changes. So let's change the metric to visualize something different, reachability. For the reachability, we are not noticing any issue. We have 100% of connectivity. Again, if we will be having any kind of issue from any of the monitors, that will be marked in the path visualization, and as well, the percentage of reachability here will be decreasing. For instance, like 91% or something like that. Right now, everything is pretty well, so we can understand that everything is running smoothly and working as expected. Just verifying, Abdel, do you have anything to add in this particular test?
Not at the moment. Perhaps if you could tell the audience, how do we get this data, for example, the BGP monitors that we are seeing here?
Great, that's a pretty good question. Actually, for the BGP, we are using a public project that belongs to the Oregon University. That university is installing routers across multiple places from around the globe, and from there we are extracting the data. To visualize that information, we can visit the documentation from ThousandEyes, and we can go to this particular link. So this is explaining more information about it, and well, you can visualize the raw data and work with it directly. So I'm gonna go back to the test, and this time I'm gonna click again in creating a test. And now let's walk through the network configuration. So previously I was checking out the configuration for routing. This time I'm gonna move forward to network. As you can see in the right panel, we can visualize that this is coming with a BGP test. So it's gonna stack the data all together. So we have two flavors. We have the agent to server connectivity and agent to agent. In the agent to server, we are testing out with our own infrastructure with something that is called enterprise agents. These are devices that we can install in multiple flavors, such as a Docker container, a Linux device, a OBI, multiple flavors. We can install those in our infrastructure, and we can pick up a destination such as google.com, ThousandEyes, etc. In the case of agent to agent, we are testing the connectivity between two agents. So between two of the agents that I was previously mentioned. For instance, a Catalyst 8000 running a container on the top to a Linux device that is also running ThousandEyes in another location. So for the agent to server, for instance, I will do pretty much the same. I will configure a test name that will be descriptive for my team, then a description to provide more details about it, and then the destination. In our case, for the network test, we can use the host name and also the IP address in question. If you are dealing with a device that maybe is changing its IP address, well, it's better to use the host name. Also, we have two protocols at our disposal. We can test out ICMP and TCP. This is important to verify that our network devices is not blocking a particular protocol, otherwise the test will not be working as expected. So for instance, if a firewall is blocking the port 80, well, we will not be able to retrieve that information. Right now, the test is configured to use, for instance, TCP port 80. Now we have different proving modes, that is prefer SAC, SAC, and SYN. In this case, actually, SAC is a more intelligent protocol. Actually, from the segment, it is just requesting the packet that it identifies that is dropping from the TCP layer. And in SYN perspective, actually, we are requesting to the other end to recollect all the complete segment if we are dropping any kind of packet in transmission. So in summary, actually SAC is consuming less bandwidth and is less prone to retransmission. Also, we have the path tracing session creation. So we have two components that we are going to visualize in the network test. That is the end-to-end, that is a measurement where we are checking out packets from the source to the destination, and something else that is a path visualization, that is a graphical view, hop by hop, that is constructed with a different traffic flow. If we click in path trace in session, we will use the same flow to create both traffics. If we uncheck this, we will use one traffic flow to create the end-to-end graphic and another traffic flow to create the path visualization. We will visualize that further in the test that I have configured. Then we have the interval. We can pick up multiple intervals. We can run the test in 1 minute basis, 2 minute basis, 5 minute basis, etc. Now, from the list, I can select all the enterprise agents or the cloud agents that we have at our disposal. The cloud enterprise agents belongs to ThousandEyes and are devices that we have spread all around the globe in multiple service providers to test out that from internet. The enterprise agents are those devices that you have inside your infrastructure and can be Docker, Linux, etc., as it was mentioned before. Then we have the alerts, that is to configure if everything is going bad, and then the advanced settings. From the advanced settings, we can verify multiple measurements. We can collect, for instance, the MTU measurements. We can collect the BGP data that I was mentioning before. If we uncheck this particular box, for instance, the BGP test will not be run, and we can visualize that this is disappearing from the right panel. Let's go to the test and visualize the data. From the agent to server, I'm gonna go to this configuration. Right now I'm testing out throughout TCP port 443. I'm using SAC, that is a more intelligent protocol, every 2 minutes. And now let's go to overview to visualize the information that I'm collecting right now. As you can see, we can see the two stacks. We have the information from the agent to server test, and we also have the information for the BGP layer. So let's go back to the agent test. And from this, we have multiple metrics. We have loss, we have latency, we have jitter. In the way that I'm changing this, the visualization of this particular bar is changing. Right now, I want to visualize the loss perspective. So I want to pick up again the loss. I'm going to go back here. And as you can see, we can walk through the timeline to visualize if everything is going bad in a particular moment. I'm gonna click in a red line, and as you can see, we can see that we have some drops around July 10 at 6:40 a.m. If I'm going to the path visualization, I can inspect that further and I can verify that we are getting some drops and the hub where this is discarding the traffic or dropping the packet, better said. Well, and we also have the information from the BGP label that I was talking about. As you can see, is similarly as the previous test that I was depicting. So we can verify, for instance, if in that particular moment we were also getting some routing information changes or problems or not. In this case, not. So maybe it's more a problem related with the particular hub or with the server itself. Now, let's go to one of the tests from web services. Again, I'm gonna pick up the start monitoring. I will click on start with a single test. And now I will go with one of the most powerful tests, that is transaction test. As you can see in the transaction test, this is one of the tests that we can verify the connectivity to a web server, and also we can emulate the interaction of one of the end users for that particular target. We will set, for instance, as a destination google.com, and here we can set up a script to apply multiple changes and do interaction as if the end user will be typing in the screen. You might say, Miguel, well, actually, I'm not quite familiar with programmability. Well, don't worry. We have a tool that is called ThousandEyes Recorder that can help you out to do some simple testing, and I'm going to cover that. So for that, you just need to click on this particular blue link. You can download the ThousandEyes Recorder, and then you will have a new application installed in your desktop. So once that you are there, it will be opening a new application. And for instance, let's suppose that you want to emulate a interaction with Google that a end user is looking for the ENNA certification from Cisco. Well, for doing that, we can click on this red circle for recording. We can type just https://google.com, and then I'm going to click on start recording. A new web browser should be open. I'm sorry. Seems like I miss a S. We can do the actions that the end user will be doing here, such as accepting the cookies, then clicking on ENNA Cisco, and then clicking on enter, and then selecting the first link. And this is the complete emulation that I'm looking from the end user. So I'm gonna go back here, click on stop, and as you can see, the script is populated. So now the script is gonna emulate that particular process. To replay that, I can just click on play, and you will see that I'm not moving my mouse. Pay attention to that. And the web browser is doing exactly what I did. It's accepting the terms for Google, it's typing what I did in Google, and selecting the first link. So now that I have that information available, I can just do a copy paste. I can go back to the portal and paste that particular logic here in this particular box. So in that way, for instance, in this test, I will be testing out every 2 minutes the configuration and the actions that I just ran. Let's go to one of the tests that I did previously. So this is a transaction test, is doing that particular interaction. I can click on transaction. and I can visualize if everything is working correctly, and also walk through the waterfall to verify if we have any kind of issue with all the components. As you can see here as well, for the transaction, we are stacking multiple components such as previous tests, a HTTP server test, a agent to server test, and a BGP. So I can change the layers and visualize the data for each particular OSI layer. Going back to the transaction, we can verify the measurements. So we have the transaction time, the time that it took completely to emulate the end user steps in the web browser, if we have any kind of errors, page errors, timeouts, etc. And we also can walk through the measurements for the other layers. Of course, every test deserves its own training, but this was just a demo to try to provide you a insight about all the tests that we have at our disposal. I would recommend you to go from one of the demo test accounts that we can grab from ThousandEyes and test this out. Again, you will need just to click on the blue button, go to the start with a single test, and then you can verify all the tests that we have available right here. So with that, Abdiel, I just finished the demo. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Miguel. So I can't emphasize more the importance of you testing this out on a trial that you can sign up for. This will be really important for preparing for the exam. So make sure you do that. Now, let's go with the exam questions. The first one is focused on enterprise agent configuration on Cisco devices. So let's start. Rigo will launch Slido on your WebEx app, so make sure you participate. It's important. There's no right or wrong at the moment. You get to practice with exam-like questions, and it helps you have an idea of where you are today. So the question reads, a network administrator has been tasked with installing an enterprise agent on a Catalyst 9K. What are the commands that must be executed to install the agent? Okay, so you see 4 different options in there. I'm sorry, we made it select all that apply, and I changed it afterwards. So just select one option here. Which do you think is the right option? So in there you have, it's all app hosting. We were talking about app hosting. So you have to decide whether it's install, create, or execute, and then follow along. So I'm gonna try it myself. Just pick a random one and see where we are. I see 34 people have responded so far. 62% are voting for app hosting install, activate, start. What do you think, Miguel?
Well, actually, I believe I will say is the option C, Abdul.
Option C. Okay, so you see a good trend?
Yeah. Actually, I believe people is making it right where.
Okay. All right. So 69%. So here's the right answer. The right order is app hosting install, then app hosting activate, and finally start. Okay, so this image you will find in the self-study guide. You will also find the image of the commands that you would have to run to uninstall the application. So again, make sure you understand what are the steps, what are the commands. Get used to the commands if you can. Please practice this. All right, so let's and make sure you review the app hosting concept. Miguel, do you want to kick us off with the second question, please?
Of course. So then we have the endpoint agent deployment at scale. So in order to configure multiple endpoints, we are looking to identify which is the better options to do it through a Microsoft domain controller. So I will invite the people to vote through Slido, sorry, just to verify which do they think it's the best option from the list. Actually, we have the Microsoft Intune. We also have the group policy objects. We have YAML, and we have PowerShell. So please go ahead, Tim.
Yeah. And okay, I see 24, 29 people participating already. And I'm just going to vote randomly. Okay.
YAML is losing the battle.
Yeah.
We can see then PowerShell, Microsoft Tune, and at the very top, group policy objects with a 54% of votes.
Yes. And by the way, there's someone who is not seeing the Slido. So when Rigo launches the Slidos, you should see sort of a notification red circle with the Slido app. So you just have to click on apps and then Slido, or it should pop up for everyone. Let us know if you have any. Yeah, Rigo.
Oh, sorry, Bill. And also, if you are for those having issues viewing it on the event screen, if you scan that QR code on in front of your screen there, that'll also take you to the polling question, and you can answer it through your mobile device as well. So you definitely have that option as well.
Thank you, Rigo. All right, so I see 58 people responded, 59, 60. All right.
Seems like group policy objects is still winning. So let's see.
Yes. So this is most of you got it right. Group policy objects, and let's see why. So Microsoft Intune, it's mostly for cloud managed ADs. You can integrate with on-prem as far as I know, but bottom line is, you use group policy objects to deploy to on-prem or even not on-prem cloud-based domain controllers. But that's the configuration type that you use. Then we have JAMF that's specific to macOS devices. In PowerShell, I'm sure you probably will deploy if not using the GUI, you can deploy GPOs, I believe, using PowerShell. So that could have been another option, but they're ultimately distractors. So pay attention in the exam. You will usually have distractor answers options. So try to discard each one of those options by following a certain logic. All right, so let's go ahead with question 3, test configuration. So the first one, the first task or subtask within 2.3 is specific to network tests. So the question reads here, which setting should be used for this network agent to server test to prevent firewalls from detecting the test traffic as malicious? So this is one of the most recurrent problems in network monitoring, that security tools such as firewalls or IPSs will shut down the traffic or probably block it already by default when you're trying to monitor within your network. So in this test, you can see that there's a target configure. We're using TCP as the protocol, port 80, probing mode, prefers SAC. Then there's other additional options in there. So the question is, from this test, what should I configure or change so that a firewall is not detecting this test as malicious? Okay, so I'm gonna give it a try. Let's pick this. All right, 74%. So 30, almost 40 people are replying with the same. Okay.
So actually, in session is on the top with 73%. Port and there is a tie between the other three options. That's interesting.
All right. So let's wait for 60 people to respond, and then we'll we'll reveal the right answer. Okay. Okay. So in session, you got it right. Miguel, do you want to explain why that is?
Yes. Well, actually, I will start with the options that are not correct. If we will be changing the protocol for UDP, we will be breaking the logic of that particular test. In this particular scenario, we will be like, for instance, if we are testing out HTTP protocol and we are changing it to UDP, well, that will be that particular test. Also, something important, agent to server is not supporting UDP as I was doing it in the demo. It is just supporting ICMP and TCP. The one that is supporting UDP is agent to agent, so that will be discarded. For the port, it's pretty much what I was mentioning before. We will be breaking the logic of the application. If the destination is not listening to that particular port, well, the destination will be rejected and it will not be working as expected. In the case of port scene, well, this is more like to avoid retransmissions and to try to avoid the consumption of the bandwidth. We have these two tests for SAC and SIN. SAC is more intelligent. SIN is less intelligent and is requesting for the complete segment rather than the particular packet. So this is not what we are asking in this particular question. The most proper one is in session. Actually, we are creating the end-to-end visualization and the path visualization with just one flow. So usually the firewalls will be detecting that there is less connections from the source to the destination, and that will be less prone to errors or to block the traffic.
Thank you, Miguel. All right, so let's go to the next question. Question 4. I think these are flowing faster, so we might have some time left at the end to answer additional questions. So let's see. This is for test configuration again. 2.3D. So that's specific to web tests. And the question, can you read the question, Miguel, please?
Of course. So test configuration. The employees and customers of retail company are experiencing performance issues with the store website, such as slowness during login process or failure when adding items to cart. Which test type is the most useful for identifying the root cause of these problems? So we have the HTTP server, we have the page load, we have the transaction test, agent to server, DNS, and last but not least, the agent to agent. So team, what do you think? Which is the best option here?
Lots of options. Right. We seem to have a very knowledgeable audience today.
Great.
I'm happy to see the trends. They're beating us.
That is true. Actually, the option C is winning. Transaction test is on the top. Then we have agent to server test. So it seems transaction test is still winning. So let's wait for others to vote here.
Okay. All right, 54. Couple more. All right, let's reveal the answer. So the right answer is transaction test type. Okay, and we'll explain why in a minute. Actually, let me just review the question again. We're talking about monitoring a website for performance issues such as slowness during the login. So that word, remember in the exam, you'll probably have all the information that you need from the question itself. So just make sure that and I'm sure you've heard this advice before. I've heard it myself, or when preparing for an exam. Make sure you read behind the sentence that you're reading. There's keywords that you're going to find that should point you in the right direction. In this case, it's logging process, okay, and performance. Those are the keywords. If you agree with me, Miguel, can you walk us through the thought process here?
Yeah, of course. As I was running it in the demo, actually, the only test that can emulate the interaction of an end user is the transaction test. So as Abdul was mentioning, well, we need to emulate that we are going through the login process. And also, if I read correctly the test, we were also emulating some card problems on the
Right.
website. So that is not possible with other tests. So we will be trying to emulate like clicks around the websites, buttons, etc. And the best suite of tests for that is the transaction test. Again, you can get, for instance, the ThousandEyes ID recorder to test that out. As I was doing it, you can just record the actions in the website and afterward translate that to a particular script. It's quite important that the framework that we use on this logic is called Selenium. So if you want to also study and go deeper on that, well, the name is Selenium and is from JavaScript.
Thank you, Miguel. Yeah, so for just giving you a little bit more information, HTTP server give you basically three metrics for web availability. Can remember if it's response time, and there's another one, and then you can stack them up with network metrics. So that doesn't cover this use case. Page load is probably the closest, but because page load will also give you like the logging page information, as a web element being loaded and how much time it takes to load and where it's being loaded from and all of those details, but it still doesn't give you it's not emulating the logging process or interacting with the card. So whenever you think about emulating the user flow, that's a transaction test most likely. The rest are probably easier to eliminate. There's a question on the chat that I want to respond verbally here. Stefan is asking about the credly badges that we can get by passing this exam. You get 3 badges. So the first is you get a badge, as you would usually get for any Cisco exam, which is CCNP specialist, is it, Rigo? Badge. Then you get a Cisco ThousandEyes specialist 2024 badge, and finally you get an upskill 2024 for multi-cloud certs. So you get 3 badges. You get to make an announcement 3 times in LinkedIn if you can. So question 5, I think this is going to be our last question of the day. So let's go ahead and tackle this one. So this is for 23B. It says, refer to the exhibit. A network admin has been tasked with monitoring the IPv6 record and named server resolution times with different agents. Select the 2 actions that the engineer must take to meet the requirements. So you have all of these options here. We're talking about creating a test for DNS that's going to get me resolution times, okay, for an IPv6 and the name server records. So for those of you in the audience that are DNS knowledgeable, this should come easy to you. So please give it a try. Let's vote here. Right. And we're going to give you some moments. Remember that we have 3 DNS types, not types, but you have 3 different tests for DNS. One is DNS server, the other one is DNS trace, and the other one is DNS sec. You get different metrics from each test, and then you have different DNS records. Which one applies to IPv6 and name server? That's what we're asking here. Okay.
So checking out the options, it seems like B is on the top. The
Right.
option create a DNS server test monitoring with a record.
All right, let's reveal the answers. So here the right answers are create a DNS server test monitoring the quadruple A record, which is for IPv6, and then you would need to create a second test for the NS record. Those are the right answers. And let's see why. Miguel, do you want to walk us through these answers?
Yes. Well, an important keyword is the record that we are trying to find. In DNS, the records are quite important. So in IPv6, the records are slightly different in comparison to IPv4. So this is a important chunk from the question. In the case of IPv4, we're just using a record, a single A record. But because the IPv6 address is longer in comparison to the IPv4, well, the DNS has been changed. In this case, the record that needs to be used is a record, and that is because it's only available for IPv6. In the other options that we have, well, A is discarded because this is IPv4. The C, well, the target of C is quite broad. With any, we will be picking up all the records available for DNS. And the question is really specific. We just need specific records from there. So I will discard that particular option for that reason as well, because it's really broad. And well, from the DNS server test NS record, we are trying to get the name server from it. So that's also the correct option. And last but not least, from the DNS trace, well, the nature of this particular test is a little bit different in comparison to a regular DNS server. In the DNS trace, we are trying to query all to the top to the root, and this is not what we are looking for on this question. So as the team voted, the proper option is B and D.
I realized we should have made one of these answers harder, like saying quadruple record for path trace.
That's true.
Anyway,
That's true.
path trace doesn't give you resolution times. That's one of the reasons why it was the incorrect answer. Anyway, again, please make sure you play around with the tests. Some of these are very easy to configure. You can use cloud agents to test it out. So it'll be important going into the exam. We'll skip these other 2 questions that we had for you, but you can find similar questions in the self-study guide. So make sure to go there in preparing for the exam. Now, specifically for our friend Arthi in the audience who has been participating on all CTFs, we are launching today not 1 but 3 different CTF. So you'll see 3 different links for these that we'll be sharing on the chat. So the reason why we're launching them as separate links is because each technology is its own tenant. So ThousandEyes has 16 missions. So we've enabled them before. Today we're enabling all for you to try it. There's one for App Dynamics, which is an integration with ThousandEyes. So it's a pretty cool mission. We also enabled 6 missions for enterprise networking, which is an introduction to SD1 and SD1 Catalyst Center. So make sure you check that out. Try those missions. They should be very straightforward. You can get hints as well. So participate. This should also help you in preparing for the exam. So with having said that, thank you for attending these webinars. Rigo will walk you through the promos.
Thank you so much, Abdel. All right, so if you've been with us for the previous sessions, we had shared some good news of an exam discount promotion that would be available to those who are registered in the prep program. So with the conclusion of the webinar series with today's session, I am happy to inform you all that you will be receiving a discount code via email for 25% off of the 300-445 exam. I don't have an exact date, but the code should arrive in your inboxes within the next several days, and it will be sent to the email address that you use to register for this prep program. And just one important reminder about the discount code is that you will need to redeem it and take your exam by the deadline, which is December 31st, 2024. So just something to keep in mind as you're wrapping up your studies and just making that decision on when to take your exam. So the deadline for that discount code is December 31st of this year. And next up, we have our Upskill 2024 Multi-Cloud Specialist Program. And with this program, you can receive some exclusive benefits if you earn any of the 3 multi-cloud specialist certifications before December 31st, 2024. So you can pass either the 300-445, the 300-440, or the 300-740 specialist exams. And the benefits will include earning the Upskill 2024 Multi-Cloud badge, as Abdel mentioned a little earlier. And then if you certify in the Enterprise Network Assurance Specialist specifically, you can also get the Cisco ThousandEyes badge. In addition to that, all of the members of the program will receive a free year subscription to the Cisco Modeling Labs Personal Edition. And if you're someone who likes to attend Cisco Live in person, there will also be a special celebration from learning and certifications at that event starting in 2025. And then more details about this program can be found by scanning that QR code on your screen. So we do hope that you jump at the opportunity of making it your goal to earn one of these specialist certifications before the end of this year and getting to enjoy these cool benefits at the same time as well. And then now for a couple of resources. So just to remind everybody, we do have a handful of network assurance resources for your convenience. If you visit our Network Assurance Hub page, you will find exam topics, tutorials, and other supplemental material that you can use to aid your exam studies. Then we have a network assurance self-study prep guide that Bill and Miguel have been using in this session. And we also have a copy for you that you can download for yourself if you haven't done so already. And then we also have several ThousandEyes resources that include the Cisco community for support. We have a ThousandEyes free trial that's good for 15 days. And we also have a couple of getting started guides for you as well. All of these resources are available by scanning those QR codes on your event screen. But I'm going to be posting the actual or direct links into the chat window in just a moment for you as well. So feel free to just copy and save them from there. And went ahead and just added them for you right now. And last but not least, if you've missed any of our previous webinars or you simply want to revisit the content and give those practice questions another try, we do have the recordings available on the Cisco Learning Network so you can catch up or you can rewatch at any time. If you scan that QR code on the screen there, you will be redirected to the learning plan that contains those videos. So feel free to save it or bookmark it and refer back to it at any time. All right, so let's see here. Let me look at what we have for questions here. I see that we are a few minutes over time. Let me see if we can have a minute to address maybe 1 or 2 questions here from our audience. I do see a question here, Abdiel or Miguel. Hopefully, there's something you can that might be able to speak to. How long is domain 1 going to remain active for free?
I think they're referring to the Cisco U course. I'm
Ah,
not sure, to be honest. I think that's how it's going to stay, but I could be wrong.
No, I agree with you, Abdiel. I think for right now there is no end date to that free first video. So yeah, it'll just remain accessible and free to everybody for now with no end date. So just whenever you can, feel free to just take advantage of that free video and have a look at your convenience. I'll actually post the link into the chat window right now for you all as well to that video on Cisco U for your reference as well.
Yeah, there's also another question about someone asking if the trial can be changed or expanded. Unfortunately, no. That's what the product decided to set it up to. That's actually so we have a special trial that's specific to the certification, but it has the same duration than the um, uh, the normal trial. So my advice here is sign up for a couple of them or as many as you need. Of course, you probably will need a different email address. Yeah, that unfortunately we can't expand it. They only expand it for when people are interested in purchasing and stuff. But so far, as far as I know, sorry, we that's not an option.
All right. And I don't see any more outstanding questions from the audience, so I think we can go ahead and wrap up our presentation for today.
Awesome.
Yeah, so Abdiel and Miguel, I just want to give you both a very big thanks for this great session today and for sharing your knowledge and expertise with our audience. I hope that everyone found great value in today's presentation and that it is helpful with your exam studies. For those of you who would like to revisit this session, we will have the recording available for on-demand viewing within approximately 5 business days after today. And just in case you missed it a little earlier, I'm going to go ahead and repost a link in the chat window where you can find the recordings to catch up or rewatch this session once it becomes available within about 5 business days. So I'll go ahead and post it again in just a moment for you. And just to reiterate, if you do have any additional questions about today's presentation or would like to continue the conversation a little further, engage with your fellow community members about this topic, please feel free to add your questions or comments in that post-event discussion to continue the conversation. And I'll go ahead and repost the link for that as well in just a moment. And yeah, I just want to thanks our presenters again for doing a great job here, and want to thank our attendees for joining us here live for our webinar today. I hope that you all enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.